If you're reading this, then I'm probably already dead. I hope it was quick and relatively painless. This journal covers my journey, my life in the wasteland, what I see, what I did, and who I've become. My name is Ethan Durant, and I was a vault dweller from Vault 76. I was born in Charleston, but I don't remember much before the world ended. When the bombs went off, chaos swallowed everything. My mom was a doctor. She didn't make it into the vault. She stayed behind to help, saving lives as the bombs fell. She was selfless to a fault. My father, the local sheriff, took us to the vault. He carried the weight of leaving my mom for the rest of his days. Life in Vault 76 wasn't exactly smooth sailing for me. My older brother Brent made sure of that. He was bigger, stronger, and had a mean streak. He would call me names, shove me around, and tell me that I was weak and wouldn't survive on the surface. Maybe that's why I buried myself in books and puzzles. If I couldn't beat him with strength, I'd outsmart him. Turns out, I'm pretty good at noticing things others missed. Dad did his best to keep us in line, but his heart wasn't in it after Mom. He was a good man, tough but fair, always trying to do right by others. A year before the vault opened, though, he had a heart attack. I was 26, and just like that, it was up to me to figure out how to stand on my own 2 feet. Brent didn't exactly step up to fill the void. He was too busy living for himself. When Reclamation Day finally came, before stepping out of the vault, I snuck into the overseer's office. She had become something like a mother to me, and I wanted to say one last goodbye. Once inside, I read her terminal and learned she had a new mission: to track down and secure missile silos across Appalachia. Those silos are relics of a world that destroyed itself, and if we don't keep them under control, we are destined to do it again. I figure my smarts and sharp eyes can help her. I'm not much of a fighter, but I know how to read a situation, spot patterns, and make connections that others miss. If helping her means we can build something better out of this mess, then maybe, just maybe, I can do right by the memory of my parents. Maybe I can even prove Brent wrong about me. October 23rd, 2102. Not sure where to start this thing, so let's start at the beginning. When I first stepped outside. When my eyes finally adjusted to the bright sunlight, I couldn't believe what I saw. Pictures just don't do it justice. Brent used to talk about the world outside, but nothing could prepare me for the real thing. Looking out over the hills, I saw trees as far as the eyes can see, and a vast, bright blue sky. I can see why Brent hated the vault so much. If I remembered how beautiful it was outside, I would hate it too. Once I stopped gawking, I came across a Mr. Handy hovering nearby. It told me that the overseer was long gone, but that 2 ladies were standing nearby and were possibly up to no good. Not wanting to waste a chance to learn more about the overseer's whereabouts, I went to ask them questions. Not gonna lie, I was terrified.
Wait, so did you come out of that vault? We both presumed it was empty. The door's not still open, is it?
It's probably empty by now. I doubt anyone's still in there.
Son of a bitch, we missed our chance. We really needed that. We got a tip from the Wayward. Heard of the place? New bar down the road. So this guy told us that...
After you gave him the last of our caps?
And he said that inside that vault is the... You know, that's where the big one is. Our last chance to turn our lousy luck around.
The big one? What are you talking about?
You know, the thing that brought everyone back. The treasure.
I think you may have gotten some bad information.
But...
I told you, Lacey. The guy was scamming us.
But... those were the last of our caps. No. Someone has to know something. We're just gonna stick it out until we find them.
Wonderful.
Thanks for answering some questions for us, I suppose. Seems only fair I return the favor. Anything we can answer for you?
Did you see another vault dweller go by? An overseer?
If your overseer crossed our path, she sure wasn't broadcasting it. Sorry. You might ask at the Wayward. Seems like they set themselves up to be a natural stopping point.
I better get going. Thanks for the information.
Watch yourself out there.
The 2 ladies directed me to the Wayward. It was better than nothing. Sure enough, I found a sign near the vault doors about this Wayward place, on Route 88. Before I headed out, I decided to look around for anything useful I could take with me. I didn't even have a weapon, after all. And that's when I stumbled upon my first dead body. She was sprawled on her back, leaning against a railing. She'd been there a while, that much was obvious. Her face was, well, there wasn't much left of it. Just leathery skin and hollowed out sockets. I felt my stomach turn, and my knees went weak. It felt wrong. Seeing her like that, like she'd just been forgotten. But then I noticed something. There, under her torso, just barely visible, was a pistol. I froze, torn between disgust and the gnawing voice of practicality in the back of my mind. A weapon like that out here could mean the difference between living or not. I stepped closer, careful not to disturb her more than I had to. My hands shook as I crouched down. I couldn't look at her face, so I focused on the task, just grabbed the gun. When I moved her slightly to free it, something shifted in her pocket. I found a few bullets. As I pulled them out, I felt like the worst kind of person. Here I was, taking from someone who couldn't even defend themselves anymore. A part of me wanted to leave it all there, walk away. But the truth is, out here, survival doesn't leave much room for sentiment. I muttered a quiet apology, barely louder than a breath, and took the gun and the ammo. I wonder if that'll be me someday. Just another body out there, forgotten, with someone like me coming along to take what's left. Before leaving her behind, I noticed the symbol on her jumpsuit, a crest with a heart and monitor on it. Not sure what it represents, but I wanted to write it down for future use. Now armed, I turned to continue my journey, only to find myself in the presence of what I can only describe as monsters. They looked human, sort of, but their skin was peeled and blistered. Their eyes were black and unfocused, but the way they moved, jerky, twitching, it was like nothing human was left inside. I froze, thinking if I stayed quiet, they wouldn't notice me. Not wanting to try out my new gun just yet, I tried to sneak around the bus and away from the lumbering creatures. As I crept slowly along the side of the old vehicle, one of them turned the corner and spotted me. In an instant, it charged at me with a low, guttural growl, hitting me with a solid swing. Instinct took over. I pulled the pistol, the one I'd taken from the corpse not long ago, and fired. I unloaded a few shots into it, making it stumble back. This only led the other monsters to attack. I was in a fight for my life now. When it was finally still, I stood there, the gun heavy in my grip. Up close, I could see more. Its cracked, weeping skin looked like it had been burned from the inside out. I couldn't stop thinking about how much it must have hurt to become this. It had been a person once. How long had it roamed, driven by hunger and rage? Was there any part of them left inside, screaming to get out? I felt sick, knowing it wasn't the last time I'd face something like this. Not wanting to deal with more of these walking corpses, I hit the road, heading down Route 88. Along the way, I noticed a small farm. It seemed quiet at first, but then I saw movement and heard gunshots. On the porch of the farmhouse, I saw what looked like a person with a weapon, staring right at me with unblinking eyes. Between us stood an ashy husk of a person with glowing green crystals coming out of its body. We danced for a few seconds before it attacked. In an instant, one enemy turned into 2, 3, 4. I was in my first gunfight with what seemed like a person, but they seemed wrong. During this fight, I noticed that my little pistol wouldn't cut it at long distances. If I wanted to keep my enemies as far away as possible while keeping myself safe, I needed a rifle. Once the gunfire stopped for a moment, I approached to see what I had killed. I just stood there staring at it. Up close, I could see how warped it was. It wasn't like the feral ghouls. This thing still moved like it knew what it was doing, but there was nothing left behind those glowing eyes. While seeking cover in the old barn, I found another husk of a person, frozen in time and reaching towards me, as if it was reaching for help. Under its ashy black skin was a slight green glow. As I approached it to get a better look, it fell apart before me. I jumped back instinctively to avoid coming in contact with the dust. My Pip-Boy clicked, showing that these husks were irradiated. With all of the enemies outside taken care of, I decided to check for supplies in the house. The human-like creatures I had fought outside were moving around on the top floor, and were speaking. I didn't have time to give much thought to that as I climbed the stairs and caught them by surprise, putting them down before they put me down. I was finally in a safe place to look them over more carefully. They had the same green crystal-like growths coming out of their skin, which was red and leathery as if it was burned. Like the ghouls, they wore clothing, indicating that they were once human. A chill ran down my spine as I tried to wrap my brain around how they turned into these things. I pushed these thoughts aside as my eyes landed on a note. It spoke of two groups, the Responders and the Brotherhood of Steel, as well as someone named Abby from the Free States. I tucked the note in here for safekeeping. As the sounds of the fight stopped ringing in my ears, I decided it was time to leave. The sun was setting and this farm was no safe haven. I finally reached the Wayward as the sun sank below the horizon. It was cobbled together from trailers and was situated on the bed of a rancid river. There was a small farm growing on one side, and a pen holding several two-headed cows on the other, along with a sentry bot painted like a cow. The robot seemed as harmless as the cows were. For a moment, I was fascinated by the animals. Radiation was a hell of a thing, but after seeing what it did to humans, adding a second head to a cow didn't seem too bad. Once I got my fill of the animals, I headed inside to finally get some answers. Or so I hoped.
Lady, I will paint the walls with you if you don't tell me where Crane's treasure is right now!
Sweetheart, I think you must be sick, because pointing a gun at me in my own bar is a terminal affliction. Look around. You think I'm having my people piece this place together out of mobile homes because I'm thrifty? Do I look like I know where this treasure is?
Shut up! You got 10 seconds to tell me where Crane is! 10,
Don't do this, son.
9, 8,
Fine.
7,
Suit yourself.
6,
Mort,
5,
busy doll?
4, 3, 2... What? Mort?
Thank you, Mort.
Of course, Duchess.
Now I'm hoping you're here to have a drink and play nice. I've had a gun pointed at me more than enough for one day. Well, not exactly the introduction to the Wayward I would have hoped for. Well, sorry about that, darling. First round's on me. Name's Duchess. There's something I could do for you.
What was that all about? Did he say something about a treasure? This is the second time I've heard about it.
Your guess is as good as mine, sweetheart. He busted in here saying I needed to turn over the location of some fella named Crane, who I guess I must have served at some point or another. Since then, a steady stream of miscreants has been making my life irritating. Not exactly good for a budding business.
I'm actually looking for the overseer of Vault 76. Have you seen her?
Overseer, huh? So you must be the one. No, I haven't seen her, but I have heard her. My people found a tape she left behind for one of her dwellers at that camp across the way, though it is a bit out of date now. Maybe you're the one she left it for. I'm happy to hand it over. Though, now that we've drifted naturally onto the topic of helping one another, maybe there's something you could do for me in return.
Let me guess. You're looking for help dealing with those thugs?
Now that you mention it, I could use an extra pair of hands. See? That boy we put down? He's not the first of his crew to roll in here. But I want him to be the last. Normally, I'd send my people out to clean house. But my muscles run off, so I don't have the bodies to spare right now. But I'm willing to pay good money if you put an end to this for me. So, what do you say?
Yeah, I'm gonna need to hear this plan of yours before I agree.
Only seems fair. The details, then. Now, each of these boys came in asking after Crane. I'm thinking we can make that work for us. How would you grab the attention of a bunch of single-minded thugs?
I don't know, a big old sign maybe?
Bingo. Exactly what I'm thinking. Just give me 1 second. Okay, I think I'll just... I just want you to know, architecture ain't exactly my forte. Huh, not half bad. So what I've chicken scratched together here for you is the schematic for one custom-made Crane Treasure Hunting Inc. sign. If I didn't butcher the plans too bad, it's got a little system built in that'll make sending out an advertisement and getting this gang's attention a snap. You just need to build it, use the tape it spits out to tell the world you're open for business, and then convince any punks that show up to tell you where their boss is hiding. They did teach you all how to build from schematics up in that vault of yours, didn't they?
I mean, I was joking about the sign, but sure, I can build it.
That's the spirit.
Hey, if you need a refresher, good old Morty Mort can help you out.
What are you on about, Mordecai?
Hey, nah, I'm not bragging or anything, but I've got some tapes that cover that very subject.
Oh, Mort, not the tapes. Well, you find yourself wanting a refresher? Talk to Mort. Of course, you're gonna need materials, but we should have enough lying around to cover you there. Get you together a little care package. Throw some rations in there, too, so you don't starve on me. And so you know, you might have to break some of this scrap down for parts. But I can spot you some workbench materials, too, since you're doing me such a big one. Who knows? Maybe you'll learn something while you do it. Now, you ready to get this show on the road?
All right, I guess I'm in.
Hot dog. Be good to have those dolts off our back at long last. Just make sure, once you find out where they're hiding, that their leader gets the message. The wayward gets left alone. And here, that overseer tape. Sounds like she set up that camp across the way so her people could get some practice in self-reliance. Probably worth looking into if you think you could use a refresher.
There was something about Duchess that I didn't trust. Seems like she had a way with words and knew how to use people to get what she wanted. And Mort? Well, he looked like one of those monsters I killed back by Vault 76, but he was talking and moving like a normal person. He called himself a ghoul and said that he was outside when the bombs dropped. That much exposure to radiation turned him into what he is today. He said that he could walk through areas of high radiation without being affected by it, but it made him hard to look at. Still, he seemed like a nice guy. I guess it's something I have to get used to out here. With the Overseer's holotape in hand, I decided to spend the night at the camp she had set up. I headed across the road and found workbenches, a cooking stove, and a spot to sleep. This would do for tonight. I decided to listen to the tape while I got settled in for the night.
Overseer's log, south of Vault 76. I knew this wasn't going to be the Appalachia I remembered, but... mutated animals? Haywire bots? No people so far. We have to be ready to rebuild in... what I can confirm is... hostile territory. Fortunately, Vault Tech was prepared. You see this? The cooking station, the stash box, the workbenches, all built with the camp. You need a home base out there. The construction and assembly mobile platform is designed to give you one. I've left my camp behind so you can use it. I need to make sure every resident of 76 has a safe haven they can start from. I'll make do without it. If it's still standing, the town of Flatwoods is further down this road. Find me there. This is the Overseer, signing off.
And now, I'm sitting here by the fire, staring up at the night sky and I can't bring myself to look away. The stars are everywhere, scattered across the darkness like they were spilled by accident. They're so bright, it's hard to believe they've been up there this whole time, shining over a world that's falling apart. The vault never prepared me for this. I mean, we had images of stars in books, and the simulated sky in the atrium tried to mimic them. But it's not the same. Not even close. Out here, they feel alive. They shimmer and pulse. And every now and then, one streaks across the sky, disappearing just as quickly as it came. They're a reminder that even after the world burned, some things didn't change. I wonder if Mom ever stopped to look at the stars during those final days before the bombs fell. Did she see the same constellations I'm looking at now? Did they give her even a moment of peace before she died? I don't know what tomorrow will bring. For now, it's just me and the stars. The world may be falling apart, but the stars, they are still here, untouched by the bombs and radiation. Maybe there's some kind of hope in that. October 24th. I killed someone today. I keep trying to write it down, hoping the words will make it feel less real, but they don't. They just stare back at me, cold and final. It wasn't supposed to happen. My instincts took over, and before I even realized what I was doing, I pulled the trigger. I can't stop replaying it in my head. What if I had taken a second glance to see what was attacking me? Would she still be alive, or would I be the one lying in the dirt right now? I don't know. I'll never know. Let me go back to the beginning of the day. Maybe if I put it all on paper, I can clear my head and I'll stop seeing her when I close my eyes. I woke up this morning feeling rested. I let myself enjoy the quiet for a few moments. No scorched screaming in the distance. No ferals lurking in the shadows. Just a breeze in my breath. Almost peaceful. Before I left, I decided to comb through the Overseer's camp one last time. It's been picked over pretty thoroughly by me and whoever else has passed through. But I managed to find a few things. A couple of old rations, a decent knife, and even a change of clothes that actually fit. They're plain and worn, but at least they'll make me less of a walking target. The Vault 76 suit stands out too much in the wasteland. Then, I packed up what little I have and took one last look around. The Overseer left her mark here. Her logs, her plans. She's got a mission, and I get the feeling it's going to take me places I'm not ready for. As I made my way to Flatwoods, I came up on what looked like a military checkpoint. It wasn't much to look at. Just two soldiers among a few barricades and a flag with the gear and sword emblem fluttering in the breeze. I walked up and talked to them, though I was a bit shaky. They didn't say much, and I didn't push them. The few words they did share, though, were enough to leave an impression. They called themselves the Brotherhood, talked about their mission, and mentioned power armor once or twice.
Nice suit of power armor? You can sign me right up.
I listened, nodding along but keeping quiet. They didn't seem interested in me, but was clear I wasn't exactly welcome. There's something about them unsettles me. It's not just the weapons and armor, it's the way they talk, like they know what's best for everyone out here. After I got a sense of who they were, I was back on the road. Flatwoods is still ahead of me, and I'm sticking to the plan. But something tells me I haven't seen the last of the Brotherhood of Steel. Just as I was entering the town of Flatwoods, I came across a new terrifying creature. It was a mutated hairless thing the size of a dog, with a bloated body and massive teeth. At first, I thought it was just a scavenger, but when it spotted me, it squealed and dug under the ground. I panicked, fumbling for my pistol. I jumped up onto a car to get off the ground. My shots were messy, but I managed to take it down. This wasteland keeps throwing horrors at me, and I know it's not done. After my encounter with the mole monster, I made it to the center of Flatwoods. The first thing I noticed was the logo painted on a piece of scrap wood. The responders. I remembered the Overseer mentioning them in one of her logs. Something about a group that tried to help survivors after the bombs fell. Seeing that logo gave me a strange sense of hope, like maybe there was some order left in the chaos. The town itself is small. There's a church right in the center, its steeple standing tall against the horizon. The doors are open, and inside, I could see makeshift beds and crates of supplies. It must have been a refuge once, maybe still is for some. Around the town, small farms and pens dot the landscape. patched together with scrap metal and wooden planks. The two-headed cows that people call Brahmin shuffle around town freely, their two heads swaying lazily as they chew. It's clear people worked hard here, trying to carve out something stable in the middle of all this destruction. But there's an emptiness too. The silence is heavy, like the town is holding its breath. I found signs that people were here, such as tools, workstations, and dead bodies, but now there is only one woman left. I stepped into the makeshift clinic in the church to continue my search for the overseer. Sure enough, I found a vault tech storage container with a holotape inside.
Overseer's log, town of Flatwoods. My God. There's no one here. The old tavern, the church, people were using them for shelter, but they're gone. Mutations we expected. But there's something else. A disease. I was attacked by... Well, it used to be a person. But it had these green, glowing lesions, and its voice. Angry, tortured. We are one. One what? Whatever happened here is beyond anything we expected. And we expected a lot. Before they were wiped out, the survivors called themselves the Responders. Looks like they were made of firefighters, police, emergency medical staff. They even have an automated system to teach people about treating water, food, survival. I'm doing their tests, and you should too. I know it's even worse than we imagined, but someone's got to know where the missile silos are, and how to secure them. The Responders are the best lead we have. This is the Overseer, signing off.
The Responders seem almost larger than life, protecting and helping the survivors. Some of them had to still be alive. The Overseer instructed me to take their training and become a volunteer in their ranks through the automated system they set up. This would also give me access to their terminal in the clinic, so I walked across the street to sign up. Inside the tavern, I found a woman. Her name is Heather, and she lives in Flatwoods with her dog Chloe. Though she wears the jumpsuit, she admitted that she wasn't one of the original Responders. She took the training here and decided to stay in town, as she loves hearing people's stories. I wished her luck and headed over to the terminals to sign up for the Responder training. Hopefully I could find where the real Responders headed off to. The tasks given by the terminal were pretty straightforward. First up, learn to clean water from Keisha McDermott, a researcher in hydrology. I found her lying on the banks of the river that wrapped around the town. According to her logs, she seemed like a hero. The teacher who shielded her students when the bombs fell and who dedicated the rest of her life to something greater, making sure people had safe water to drink. Beside her, there were scattered tools, a broken test kit, and a few vials. Even in death, it felt like she was still working, still trying to protect people. Her legacy was an old holotape and the test she created to determine how contaminated the water sources around town were. I took a sample of water from the river and a local water pump and analyzed them at her terminal in the clinic. No surprise, all water sources around Flatwoods are highly contaminated and irradiated. Boiling water seems like a necessity from here on out. The second task was to cook food, which took me to another pleasant sight, the corpse of Father Dilbert Winters. Even in the face of devastation, he'd held on to his faith, believing the bombs were part of some divine test, though he must have struggled with being left behind like everyone else. He didn't just preach, though. He led, teaching survivors how to cook with what little they had and helping others cope with the unbearable weight of guilt and loss. Laying on the cold floor, his life cut short, it was clear his faith wasn't just in a higher power. It was in the people he worked so hard to help. I found some of Father Winter's old recipes, carved some steaks from one of the local Brahmin, and cooked at the cooking station. As the father said, just cook it until it stops oozing. And with those two things done, I was admitted in as a full volunteer. I headed back to the clinic and accessed the terminal. According to the leader of the Responders, they had their main base at Morgantown Airport. So that was to be my next stop. As I left Flatwoods, I took one more look back. Something seemed a bit off to me. I had found the responders long since dead. More importantly, I didn't see any scorched. I don't know much about these walking monstrosities yet, but it seems like the responders left at Flatwoods were killed by something else. Father Winter's terminal talked about a group in the mountains, a group that seemed to be up to no good. Were they the ones responsible for the responders' deaths? With any luck, they are long gone like the responders. If not, well, I don't think I want to run into them. And now we come to the part of my day that I wish I didn't have to write. It started with gunfire near that old Slocum Joe's. I saw scorched fighting each other, and then 2 dogs attacking. I had put down dogs before on the road, but never one showing ownership. I took them out with a few shots, but this only drew the attention of the scorched. Bullets ricocheted off the pavement as I ducked behind an old bus, returning fire as best I could. Then I saw it, the edge of a figure on the other side of the bus. Just a glimpse of leather and movement. I assumed, without thinking, it was another scorched. I aimed for the hip and fired a few shots. They went down, and I took cover once more. I rounded the bus, ready to finish the fight. But it wasn't a scorched I had shot. It was a woman, now sprawled out on the cracked pavement. She had spiked hair, leather pants, a harness across her chest, and a gun in her hand. But her eyes weren't glazed and wild like the scorched. They were just empty, human. I don't even know if she was shooting at me. Maybe she thought I was one of them, firing in self-defense. Or maybe she was trying to protect herself from the chaos around us and got caught in my panic. I didn't give her a chance to explain or even to shout. As I took in what I had done, a man walking around on the top of the hill caught the corner of my eye. Panic hit me like a bullet. Was he with her? Would he think I'd done it on purpose? Was he coming for me? I couldn't take the chance. My legs moved before my brain caught up, and I sprinted down the road, leaving the bus, the gunfire, and her body behind. I should have stayed. I should have faced him, explained what happened. Maybe he would have understood. Maybe he wouldn't. But I ran. Now, all I can think about is her lying there, lifeless because of me. And those questions I'll never have answers to. Was she aiming at me? Could I have stopped her without pulling the trigger? Did I even need to shoot? My brain pushed aside the thought of killing an innocent person. I didn't have time to think about it in the moment. I needed to continue on to the airport. At first glance, the airport looked quiet, almost peaceful, but that didn't last long. The trouble started at the main gate. Scorched were there, standing like sentries. It was eerie. They weren't just wandering like the others I'd seen. They were guarding the entrance with weapons at the ready. And the moment they saw me, they opened fire. Inside the gates, I found my first signs that the responders had been here. Tents and medical equipment were seen with scorched wandering among it all. The main building seemed boarded up at first glance. The sun was starting to set and I needed to act quickly. I made a plan. Clear out the scorched, find out what I could about the overseer's whereabouts, and find a way into the old airport building to take shelter for the night. I hoped it was less scorch-filled inside. I had hoped. After clearing the main entrance, I made my way around the side of the building to the tarmac. It stretched out like a graveyard of survival. Old tents, abandoned community areas, and makeshift shelters were scattered across the concrete, signs of a community that had once called this place home. But now, it was crawling with scorched. They moved among the wreckage like they belonged there, dragging their feet and clutching weapons. Some still wore what looked like responders' uniforms, torn and burned but unmistakable. While searching through all of the old hangars for clues about the overseer, I came across signs of death and devastation. I hate to admit it, but dead bodies, skeletons, blood, and gore were becoming all too common. I always noticed them, but the sight of it all has started to affect me less and less. It's strange and a bit concerning. In one particular bunker, which looked like the home of the local mechanic or handyman, I stumbled upon some useful items, including a new marksman rifle. I didn't have many bullets for it, so I tucked it away for safekeeping. Further down, I found another hangar outside of a fenced-in area at the far end of the tarmac. Inside was a clinic and what seemed to be a medical research facility. It was eerie, the silence punctuated only by my own cautious footsteps. After finding what I could in the clinic downstairs, I moved to the second floor and came across a disturbing sight. A scorch laid out on a table mid-dissection. The smell of decay was overwhelming, but I forced myself to stay and investigate. The terminal nearby held the notes of a researcher named Claire Hudson. Her work was both fascinating and terrifying. She wrote about a creature called the Scorch Beast, a monstrous being with giant wings, highly radioactive, and often traveled alone or in small groups. The description alone was enough to make my blood run cold. Claire believed these beasts were the source of the Scorch Plague. Her notes also described the horrifying transformation caused by contact with the Scorch Beast. The skin darkens, a stench of ash permeates the air, and burning lesions appear, resembling smoldering embers. Humans lose their higher mental functions and become aggressive, attacking anything in sight with whatever weapons they can find. It's a fate worse than death, turning people into mindless killers. And it doesn't stop at humans. Any creature can fall prey to this change. Despite the bleakness of her findings, Claire held onto a sliver of hope. She believed a cure might be impossible, but a vaccine could be within reach. She mentioned finding equipment at AVR Medical Center that could help in creating this vaccine. This is something I need to look into, not only for my own protection, but maybe this could help other people too. Her last entry was filled with practical advice that could save my life. Scorch beasts should be avoided at all costs. If I encounter one, I need to find cover and shoot from a hidden position. The scorched, as I already knew, can be taken down with bullets, but it's crucial to keep my distance to avoid infection. This information is both a blessing and a curse. It equips me with the knowledge I need to survive, but it also paints a stark picture of the dangers lurking in this new world. Every step outside feels heavier now, knowing what's out there. With the sun long gone from the sky, I headed into the concourse. I felt physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted from the long day and was hoping against hope that some of the responders were still inside, waiting to welcome me with open arms and a warm meal. That wasn't the case. As soon as I entered, I saw a giant aircraft sticking from the roof. I didn't have time to take in the strange spectacle for long, as I quickly realized the place was overrun with scorched. Their guttural growls and shambling footsteps echoed through the halls, making every corner a potential death trap. I had no choice. I was going to need to fight my way through. In the midst of the chaos, a radio broadcast crackled to life. A woman named Chavez, the leader of the responders, came through. She explained how they were being overrun, and any responder should come to help at once. As I continued through the building, I noticed that they had set up a maze, blocking doorways and staircases to funnel the scorched into kill zones. It was a desperate plan, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. It would seem that the scorched turned the tables, slaughtering everyone. I fought for what felt like hours before I found myself at a locked door, requiring a key card to open. I searched down the nearby staircase and discovered one of the last responders. She was slumped in a chair, a key card clutched in her hand. A note nearby suggested she had died alone. The other person she was conversing with had run off to try to distract the scorched, hoping she could escape. It didn't work. Was this Chavez? Did she get stuck outside the doors, locking them behind her? It was a sobering reminder of the human cost of the struggle to survive out here. With the key card in hand, I unlocked the door and stepped into a scorched-filled hallway. I had found a few boxes of ammo for my marksman rifle, so I finally was able to give it a shot. It worked like a charm. I was able to put down the scorch that still guarded this place with ease. I made my way to the end of the hallway and through the door into what seemed to be the last safe place in the building. This must have been the responders' command center, with terminals, a map table, and bunk beds. To my surprise, a man was there, alive, sleeping on an old mattress. He looked worn and tired, but very much alive. His name is Dontrell. He told me he had come to check on his brother who volunteered as a responder. Now he stays here, waiting for the cancer in his body to take him. I couldn't imagine staying so close to those monsters, especially with the constant threat of infection and disease. But right now, I was too exhausted to argue or even process it fully. I let him rest while I took a look around the HQ before I turned in for the night. Amidst the supplies and old equipment in the HQ, I found a box left behind by the overseer. Inside was a holotape with her next directive. Listening to her voice provided a strange comfort, a connection to the past and a reminder of my mission.
Overseer's log, Morgantown. I used to love coming here on weekends, taking flight lessons. Now it feels like I walked into a nightmare. Those scorched things are everywhere. I kept quiet. They didn't see me. I managed to observe them for a bit. Whatever this disease is, it seems to completely take over its host. The ones that used to be human, eventually they go rigid, like some kind of stasis. And if they stay like that for too long, they sort of burn up from the inside out. Vesuvius in reverse. I wondered what could possibly cause all this. And then I got my answer. It swooped down from the sky, screeching, breathing, infecting everything. I don't know how to fight this. But we need to consider all our options. Even the nukes. We find the source of this scorched plague and wipe it from the map before it can leave Appalachia. But first things first, we can't let the disease spread to us. Looks like the responders were developing some kind of inoculation. I'm going to pick up their work. You should too. This is the Overseer, signing off.
The Overseer and I have the same idea. Before we do anything to stop this plague, I need to make sure I don't fall victim to it myself. My next stop will be the AVR Medical Center, where I can hopefully find Claire Hudson, or at least what's left of her work. As I settle in for the night, I can't shake the images of the day. The fallen responders are heroes to me and so many others. The memory of the person I killed during the frantic fight near Slocum Joe's haunts me each time I close my eyes. The guilt is unbearable. Facing the relentless hordes of Scorched was terrifying, each one a grotesque reminder of what we're up against. And then there's the old man in the responders' HQ. Despite the darkness, I find a small comfort in his presence, a rare sense of trust that allows me to sleep near him without fear. It's a faint glimmer of humanity in an otherwise bleak and brutal world. But I have to keep moving forward. For Claire Hudson, for the Overseer, for everyone who believed in a better future. October 25th. I woke up today in the relative safety of the responders' HQ within Morgantown Airport. The old man I met yesterday was still asleep on the bunk opposite mine. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel a flicker of hope. Despite everything, we're still alive, still fighting. But the sense of safety was fleeting. I knew I couldn't stay here forever. Claire Hudson's notes were clear. The AVR Medical Center held the equipment needed to possibly create a vaccine for the Scorched Plague. If there was any chance of stopping this nightmare, I had to go there. Gathering my gear, I made sure my new marksman rifle was loaded and ready. The exit was clear, and water was falling from the sky. Rain. I looked up. The sky was a swirling mass of gray clouds. I stood there, letting the rain wash over me, feeling the coolness on my skin. It was both refreshing and surreal. Of course, I knew of rain, but I never stopped to imagine what it would feel like. It was incredible. Until a gust of wind blew past, sending a shiver down my spine. I wrapped my wet shirt tighter around me and continued my journey. Heading south towards AVR Medical Center, I kept to the back roads and forest paths. The main roads were too dangerous, filled with both the scorched and other desperate survivors. The forest, though treacherous, offered cover and concealment. The silence of the woods was almost comforting, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or distant cry of some mutated creature. As the day wore on, the AVR Medical Center came into view. The building stood like a beacon of the past, a place where science and hope once thrived. Now, it looked just as abandoned and desolate as the rest of the world. But I knew that inside, there might be the key to fighting back against the plague. As I expected, the medical center was overrun with scorched. They roamed the halls and rooms, their guttural noises echoing through the empty corridors. By now, I've gotten pretty good at dealing with them. Keeping to the shadows, I took them out one by one, my marksman rifle proving to be an invaluable tool of survival. After what felt like hours of clearing room after room, I finally found Claire's lab. The site was a mix of hope and despair. The scientific equipment was covered in dust, papers were scattered everywhere. It looked abandoned. But her terminal was still operational. I took a deep breath and approached the terminal, eager to see what information she had left behind. Her notes detailed her research on the scorched beasts and the scorched, much of which I had already read at the airport. But there was more. Detailed descriptions of her attempts to create a vaccine, the challenges she faced, and her theories on how to succeed. It was clear she had been close, but the scorched invasion at the airport had cut her work short. Reading her final entries, I could feel her desperation and determination. She had known the risks, but continued working, driven by the hope of saving humanity. It was a sobering reminder of the stakes we're all facing. With the information she left behind, I now had a clearer idea of what to do next. I would need two things to make the vaccine: a new fuse for the electrical box and a sample of ghoul blood. According to Claire's notes, the ghouls seemed to be the creatures that were most resistant to the scorch plague. Ghouls were all over the wasteland, but the fuse would be trickier to find. I saw a train yard on my map and figured that would be as good a spot as any to start looking. After leaving Claire's lab, I decided to head towards the train yard, hoping to find the equipment she had mentioned or at least some useful supplies. Even from a distance, I could hear the clicking of metal on concrete. The place was overrun by little robots. They stood on 4 little metal legs and were painted green with a red star in the middle. Their old speakers pumped out garbled words that didn't sound like English at all. I thought they were kind of cute until one spotted me and started firing. Yet another thing trying to kill me in Appalachia. Though they weren't the easiest things to hit due to their agility, within a few shots, they were nothing more than scrap on the ground. There were a lot of them, and I started to wonder where they were coming from. I pushed the thought aside and continued my search for the fuse. As I was searching, I heard heavy footsteps outside. My heart started racing, and I pressed my ear against the wall. The footsteps were loud and deliberate, echoing through the train yard. The noise sent chills down my spine, and I knew better than to stick around to find out what was causing it. I had to find that fuse fast. After picking through every locker and storage crate, I finally found a single Type T fuse in a tool chest in an old locker room. I grabbed it and hightailed it out of the train yard, taking extra precaution not to run into whatever was stomping around outside. Next up was finding a ghoul and getting a blood sample. Easy enough, I thought. There had to be some around Charleston. As I looked around the city for my target, I couldn't help but notice the destruction. But it wasn't caused by a bomb. The building and streets seemed to be wiped away, all pushed in a similar direction, and sand and silt were deposited among the rubble. A flood, perhaps, but not a natural flood. It wasn't long before I encountered a group of ghouls in an old store. I steeled myself and took them out, my rifle echoing through the empty shop. Once they were down, I approached cautiously, my stomach churning at the thought of what I had to do next. Taking a deep breath, I pulled out a syringe and collected a blood sample from one of the ghouls. The sight and smell of the dark, viscous fluid were nauseating, but I managed to keep it together. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the city. I knew I had to get back to the AVR Medical Center before nightfall. The darkness brings out even more dangers, and I wasn't keen on finding out what else might be lurking around. The last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the mountains as I reached the AVR Medical Center. A few scorched had made their way back inside, but I cleared them out on my way back to Claire's lab. I wanted to get the vaccine before I went to bed for the night. I replaced the fuse in the electrical box, popped the blood sample into the centrifuge, and analyzed it using the terminal. I turned to see the symptomatic. It stood before me, and a sense of unease crept into my mind. What if this didn't work? What if this machine is broken and kills me when I step inside? I figured it was a risk, but one I had to take. I stepped inside, and needles pricked my skin as I received the vaccine that Claire Hudson had died for. I stepped out of the machine and heard a speaker overhead crackle to life. It was Claire.
And if you're hearing this, it means you must have completed my work and inoculated yourself. The next step is to find out if our elite anti-scorched unit, the fire breathers, are still alive. You can find them at the Charleston Fire Department. The fire breathers need to know the vaccine is ready. If they didn't make it, then you're going to need their weapons to stay alive.
The fire breathers seemed like the best equipped against the scorched and had better weapons to boot. Looks like Charleston Fire Department is my next stop. I'm not sure if it was the vaccine that did it or the day's events, but once the voice stopped, I was overcome with exhaustion. I decided to stay here in the lab for the night. Claire had a bed and some supplies here, and I'm sure she won't mind me using them. It had been a long, harrowing day, but I feel a sense of accomplishment. Each small victory, each step forward, brings me closer to finding a way to fight back against this nightmare. For now, I need to rest and gather my strength. October 26th. I'm still shaking from what I encountered today. I didn't know something like that thing was even possible. It was huge and it spoke. Was it still human? Okay, Ethan, settle down. Start from the beginning of the day. I had a hard time sleeping last night. Too many thoughts swirling in my head, and the constant groans of the scorched didn't help either. So, I decided to hit the road early. I crammed some cram into my stomach, definitely not the breakfast of champions, and headed out of the AVR medical building. Before I left, I took a moment to say one more goodbye to Claire. Standing there in the lab, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I thanked her for making the vaccine, for giving us a fighting chance against the plague. I promised her that I'd make sure it gets to as many people as possible. I owe her that much. With a final nod, I turned and walked away. The Charleston Fire Department was an impressive sight, even in its current state of disrepair. The main building stood tall, a sturdy structure that had weathered the apocalypse better than most. As I approached, I noticed a few fire trucks still parked in the truck bays, their red paint chipped and faded but still recognizable. It was a poignant reminder of the world that once was, where these vehicles would have rushed to the aid of those in need. Inside, the place was relatively well maintained compared to other ruins I've seen. There were a few Protectron robots wandering around, their metallic voices occasionally breaking the silence as they patrolled the area. I was cautious at first, but they didn't see me as a threat. Upstairs, I found living quarters and a small kitchen. It was clear that the fire breathers had lived here, ready to jump into action at a moment's notice. Some of the beds were neatly made, and personal items were still scattered around, frozen in time. Other than the Protectrons, there was only one person living at the fire department that went by Tiffany. Like the woman I met in Flatwoods, Tiffany was working on becoming a fire breather, but was struggling with the knowledge exams. There were 2 tests to become a fire breather in the automated system they had set up, a knowledge test and a physical test. The knowledge test was a breeze, especially with the notes I found scattered around the department. They really helped me understand the basics of firefighting and survival tactics. Next up was the physical test. As I headed outside to find the starting point, My eyes caught sight of another Overseer box. I was so excited to find another one. It meant I was still on the right track. I opened it and listened to a recording.
Overseer's log, Charleston Fire Department. Automation used to define life in West Virginia. Now it's the only thing left. These training programs that the responders have set up. How many survivors were running through these? It takes a certain calling to voluntarily run into the middle of a fire. Rescue people. Looks like they kept up that spirit, even as the dangers changed. They must have fought the Scorched up close more than anyone. I need to find out what they knew.
Her message was short, but made perfect sense. We needed to learn more about the Scorched, and who better to teach us than the fire breathers, the people who fought them the most. Their first-hand knowledge and strategies are crucial if we're going to have any chance of surviving and combating this threat. Now, Tiffany told me that the physical test was a breeze. She said it with such confidence that I almost believed it would be easy. However, she failed to mention one minor little issue. The building where the test starts is surrounded by massive, hulking monsters. As I approached the building, I ran into a group of them and instantly regretted ever leaving the vault. These creatures were unlike anything I've ever seen. They're massive, towering over even the tallest human, with grotesquely muscular bodies covered in sickly green skin. Their eyes burn with a fierce, animalistic intelligence. They were clad in ragged bits of armor and wielded makeshift weapons, scavenged from the ruins of civilization. They move with a terrifying combination of brute strength and surprising speed. And they talk. Their voices were deep and guttural, echoing with a malevolent glee as they hunted me down through the building. Just thinking about those mutants now sends a shiver down my spine. The physical test might have been a breeze, but getting to the starting line, that was a whole different challenge. Once I cleared out those giant monstrosities and my heart settled back into my chest rather than in my throat, I pressed on and took the physical exam. The test consisted of a timed obstacle course, but the real test wasn't the course itself. It was battling the Scorch that kept swarming me every time I tried to get through it. Eventually, I managed to finish the exam, out of breath and on edge. Once I was done, I listened to the pre-recorded message from the chief of the fire breathers.
Melody Larkin, Fire Breathers Captain. Congratulations on your progress thus far. Until recently, we'd now be moving you on to our final exam. A nice, easy run through an active mind burn. But these days, we got bigger fish to fry. The Scorched creatures have been pouring through Big Bend Tunnel. Someone has to stop them, and the fire breathers are the only ones with the tools and the know-how to get it done. So, for your final exam, you'll be running a course cooked up by our very own Lieutenant Madigan to get you up to speed on dealing with these Scorched. Head on over to the Belchin Betty shaft when you're ready. Our handler bot, Bernie, will get you oriented. Come back alive and human, and you're in.
Her voice crackled through the speaker, giving me my next set of instructions. I was to head to a mine for my final test in this grueling process to become a fire breather. With my day spent running around an apocalyptic hellscape, I had hit my limit. Exhausted, I decided to head back to the fire department to get some rest. I remembered that there was a room full of bunk beds waiting for me at the station. The thought of a bed, any bed, was too tempting to pass up. When I got there, I was thrilled to find a bunk with somewhat clean sheets and a blanket. It felt like a luxury in this desolate world. I settled in, feeling a strange sense of comfort in the familiar surroundings of the firehouse. For now, I can rest, recharge, and prepare for whatever comes next at Belching Betty Mine Shaft. October 27th. While making my way towards Belching Betty Mine, I ran into a trader leading 2 Brahmin full of goods down the road. He seemed nervous and hurried, casting quick glances around as if expecting trouble at any moment.
You should too, stranger. You hear them? Up there, doing who knows what. Super mutants. I don't want no trouble. Oh no. They're here!
He warned me that there were super mutants in the area and that I should run while I had the chance. Before I could ask what the hell a super mutant was, the sound of heavy footsteps and guttural roars filled the air. A group of the monsters from yesterday started shooting in our direction. Super mutants. The trader and I barely had time to react. I grabbed my rifle and moved to find a clear shot at the first giant. The trader fought bravely alongside me, his desperation giving him a fierce determination. The battle was intense, and in the chaos, one of the trader's Brahmin was killed. We managed to take down the super mutants, and the area fell silent once more. The trader was visibly shaken but grateful. Despite his loss, he thanked me profusely for my help. In return, he offered me some food and drinks from his pack. It wasn't much, but every little bit helps out here. We bid each other farewell and parted ways. It made me feel good that I helped to keep him going. As I moved south towards my final test, the landscape began to change drastically. The skies grew darker, and a thick, choking haze filled the air. The once green hills turned into desolate mounds of ash and soot, the remnants of the region's coal mining days. The ground beneath my feet felt unstable, a mix of ash and slag that shifted with every step. The air is thick with particulate matter, making it hard to breathe. I had to wear my gas mask almost constantly to keep from choking. I couldn't stop, though. I had to stay focused on my mission. I drew closer to the mine and was almost there when I ran into a new horror. These creatures are strange and unsettling. They're humanoid, hunched over with a twisted posture, and they wear tattered clothes that look like they might have once belonged to miners. Their faces are obscured by thick gas masks, which makes their muffled voices even more eerie. The masks and clothing give them an almost human appearance, but there's something distinctly off about them, something that sends a chill down your spine. What surprised me most was my own reaction. When I spotted the first one, I didn't hesitate. I shot first without questioning if it was human or not. As I write this, I realize something. I'm adapting to the wasteland. My instincts are sharpening, and I'm reacting faster, more decisively. But there's a part of me that's worried about what this means. Shooting without hesitation, even at something that once might have been human. It's a sign of how much this place is changing me. I just hope I can hold on to who I am, that I don't lose myself entirely to this harsh new world. I finally made it to Belching Betty. The entrance had a small building next to it which housed another fire breather's protectron. It greeted me in its overly mechanical way, and after verifying my identity, it provided me with a fire breather's uniform.
Applicant detected. Kit ticket issued. Please collect your gear. Please present your uniform ticket to the appropriate dispenser. Examination briefing. Holotape issued.
The gear is impressive. A thick jacket, a sturdy helmet, and a gas mask. As I put it on, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The heavy fabric and protective mask made me feel like I could finally breathe again, shielding me from the toxic air that permeated the ash heap. Now equipped with what I would need for Belching Betty, I walked to the entrance. It was a big cement structure with a door to the mine chiseled into it. An American flag stood tall outside, and a sign provided a warning. Danger. Underground mine fire. Dangerous gases are present. Ground is prone to sudden collapse. It wasn't the most welcoming of sights, but if I was going to find new ways to deal with the scorched and track down the overseer, then I had to enter. I took a deep breath of filtered air through my gas mask and headed inside. The mine was long since abandoned. It was once owned by the Garahan Mining Company by the looks of it. The main entry to the mine was walled off with a thick metal gate. Inside, I saw the remnants of some scorch that had become petrified just beyond the wall. It was foreboding and eerie, to say the least. I opened the doors using a terminal nearby and headed inside. The mine shaft was a dark tunnel, its walls blackened from years of exposure to smoke and fire. The metal tracks lay rusted on the ground and guided me further into the mine. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning coal, a constant reminder of the inferno raging below. Faint flickers of light from within hinted at the ongoing fires, casting eerie shadows that danced along the tunnel's walls. This was no ordinary mine. It was a hellish labyrinth filled with dangerous gases and unstable ground. The first chamber of the Belching Betty mine opened up before me. My eyes quickly adjusted to the new space, revealing the unmistakable forms of Scorch lurking in the shadows and posing in their last position before petrification. I didn't let them get to that point. With my rifle at the ready, I looked down the scope and fired shots, clearing out the Scorched in the chamber. It didn't take long to clear out the few Scorched that dotted the area. While searching the area for anything useful, I stumbled upon the body of a fallen fire breather. The sight stopped me in my tracks, a grim reminder of the risks and sacrifices made by those who came before me. The fire breather lay motionless, their gear charred and covered in ash. I knelt beside them and searched the body, hoping to find something that could help me identify this brave soul. I found a holotape and a few supplies.
Yeah, the red light is on, so it's recording. This is Maxine Ballard, squad leader of the Scorch Slayers. We're making this recording to document our descent into the Belching Betty mine for the final exam.
Well, say which exam.
Alright, for the fire breather's final exam, we're supposed to head inside, find the emergency beacon, and watch out for Scorch.
Piece of cake. I don't know. If it's so easy, why isn't anyone else completed the exam?
Because they weren't us. We've been hunting Scorched at the farms for days. How much harder could the ones in the mines be? Grow a little backbone.
Come on, guys. Let's stick together on this. Alright, shut up. Okay, Scorch Slayers. It's time to lock and load. Let's get the job done.
The holotape was a journal recorded by Maxine Ballard, who led the Scorch Slayers. They were taking the test to become fire breathers as well, and it sounded like there were about 5 people in the group. The dead body I found must have been one of them. It seems they didn't make it. I had a moment of panic. If a group of 5 didn't make it, what are the odds that I would? I pushed the thoughts aside. This was one body out of 5. Surely the rest made it. That comforting thought was broken when I found the second body.
Okay, squad leader. Tim and Andrew are both dead. Now what the hell are we supposed to do?
Shut up, Sai. She's recording. Entry 2. We've lost Timothy Wolf and Andrew Rhodes to a swarm of Scorched. And the rest of us barely made it past them alive. I'm beginning to think Melody Larkin may have underestimated the difficulty of this exam.
You're damn right she did. This is suicide. What the hell with this? I'm going back.
No, you're not. You're sticking with us.
Why? So we can get picked off one by one till we're all dead? No way, not me.
You know what, Sai? You've been acting like a coward ever since we started tackling a Scorch at the farm. And now, Tim and Andrew are dead because of you.
What the hell are you talking about?
I saw him, Max. When those Scorched pushed through the tunnels, they came at us from all sides. Tim and Andrew were holding, and they told Sai to watch the back, but he didn't. He ran away and left their rear flank wide open. That's what took them down.
Bullshit! She's lying, Max.
Oh, both of you knock it off. Sylvester, if you want to go, go, but you're going back alone, and I guarantee we didn't clear everything behind us. Even if you make it, mark my words, you'll never be part of this squad again.
Fine. To hell with both of you. I'm out of here!
You're seriously letting him go?
The 2 bodies I found must have been Timothy Wolf and Andrew Rhodes. Their leader probably left the journals on their bodies as a way of telling folks that entered their story, in case her and the others didn't make it. I stood for a moment of silence to honor them before heading further into the mine. The journal explained how one of the Scorch Slayers named Sylvester fled from the mine leaving the other two to continue. The narrow halls of the belching Betty mine were a nightmare to navigate. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burning coal, making it hard to see and even harder to breathe, despite the gas mask. The scorched were everywhere. Their guttural groans and the eerie clatter of their weapons echoed through the mine. My rifle took care of the scorched one by one, their charred bodies collapsing in heaps on the mine floor. As I pressed on, I kept my eyes peeled for any clues about the scorched slayers. I knew Tom and Andy had met a tragic end, but I hoped against hope that some of their comrades might have survived. My hopes were cut short when I found other tape on the body of a fallen scorched.
Entry 3. Sylvester left a team some time ago. We heard screams echoing through the mines only minutes after he left. Rita and I are all that's left. Despite the odds, we've somehow made it to the beacon.
What's supposed to happen when we activate that beacon?
I don't know. I suppose we'll get Melody Larkin's next instruction about how to get out of here.
Well, there's no reason for us to stand here and wait. Push the damn thing. Oh my god.
They're everywhere. I don't know if we're gonna make it, but we didn't come this far just to give up.
I'm with you, Max.
If we don't make it out of here, I just want you to know it's been a real honor, Rita.
Likewise. Now let's go show those Scorched what it means to be a fire breather.
They didn't make it. Maxine and Rita activated the beacon and brought a horde of scorched their way. I found their bodies near the button, and now it was my turn. I envied Max and Rita for a moment. They had died together with someone trusted watching their back. If I pressed that button, there would be nothing to tell my story besides this journal. But if the Scorched Slayers hadn't left those tapes behind, I never would have known their names. It's dawning on me just how important this journal is to me, and just how alone I am in this world. It was my turn to press the button. I took a few deep breaths, closed my eyes, and pressed it. Immediately, a loud alarm sounded and a barely audible robotic voice explained that I, the applicant, had to return to the surface for examination completion. The only problem being that between myself and the exit was a swarm of scorched. I found cover in one of the buildings that dotted the chamber, popping shots at the scorched that filed in. After taking out a few, a moment of calm fell over the chamber and I didn't want to waste it. I ran to the stairs that would lead up to the surface, taking out any scorched that stood between me and freedom. Once clear of the loud alarm and the scorched horde, I made it up through the tunnels and back to the entrance. I had done it. I had made it through all of the tests left behind by the responders and the fire breathers. I returned to the Protectron at the entrance and spoke to it to complete the examination. Inside the building, I found something amazing. A power armor chassis with a few pieces still attached. My father spoke about power armor. He had served in the military before the bombs dropped and had told me stories about what he used to wear. But the stories didn't do them justice. The thought crossed my mind to get in it, to take it with me and find the other pieces. On second thought, I knew it would be impossible for me to stick to the shadows and catch my enemies off guard if I was trouncing around in walking tank. I left it there and turned my attention to the Protectron.
All examinations complete. Congratulations. Issue it. Orientation followed tape. Please proceed to Charleston Fire. For company registration.
Crew, hey, congratulations. If you're hearing this, it means you've earned yourself a place in the fire breather. Head back to the Charleston Fire Department and have the active captain register you for duty. That'll grant you access to our internal computer system. Once that's done, your captain should be able to point you to your first assignment. But there's no time to waste. Move on, recruit. Welcome to the Fire Breathers.
The Protectron gave me a holotape from a leader of the Fire Breathers, welcoming me onto the team. I was instructed to return to Charleston Fire Department to receive further instructions from my captain. But the tape also mentioned that I could now access their computer system. If there was anything of importance left behind, I would find it all now that I was a fully fledged fire breather. I didn't need to be told twice to return to the fire department. The sky had grown dark and the memory of the bed and safety of where I spent the previous night came back to me. I hightailed it back to Charleston before anything big and mean caught up to me. I walked through the doors of the fire department and felt the weight of the day's events hit me like a ton of bricks. I removed my helmet and heavy coat and threw them on a table until tomorrow. The cool night air felt incredible on my skin, and I couldn't help but enjoy the fresh breaths that hit my nose and mouth. As I made my way to the captain's office, I popped a can of potato crisps and started to eat. I sat down at the fire breather's master terminal and registered. Next up was to go to the dispatch room. I poked around the terminal a bit more and found messages that gave me a few helpful tips that may be worth following up on. Garahan Mining had designed exclusive excavator armor for its employees before the bombs fell. These could be produced at a facility in the basement of the Garahan's estate. Another message mentioned a place called Big Bend and how it was a source of the scorched. The fire breathers were going to lead an attack on the place and had waited for Lieutenant Madigan to return to kick it off. However, he never returned from his last assignment. I walked to the dispatch room and listened to the last transmission for Lieutenant Madigan himself.
There are 800,000 outstanding support calls. There is one priority call. Accessing.
Maria, Melanie, whoever's down there, it's Madigan checking in. At long last. I'm up here just outside the top of the world, and I found something I think could be game-changing. Don't ask me where I got it. I just need you to send backup up here quick. The best guns you can spare. Call me back at this frequency as soon as you can. Madigan out.
Looks like my next stop is top of the world. According to my map, there is a place called Top of the World up in the mountains. That is going to be a hell of a trip, but it's worth it if Madigan was right and whatever he found is game-changing. I haven't forgotten what I learned about the people in the mountains, though. I have a hunch that the people of Flatwoods had run-ins with some folks that meant them harm that lived up there. They may even be the ones that wiped out the residents of Flatwoods. As terrible as it is to write this, I hope whoever lived up there is long gone, either moved away or no longer alive. I am going to spend one more night at the fire department here in Charleston. I am too tired and sore to move, let alone climb a damn mountain. More tomorrow. October 28th. I saw one today, a scorched beast. It was terrifying, it was surreal, and it was amazing. I know how horrifying it is, what it represents, what it can do, but I can't help feeling a strange fascination when I think about it now. Let me back up. It's always better to start from the beginning and keep the events straight in my mind. I woke up and ate the last of my rations from the vault, a few fancy lad snack cakes and a can of purified water. I'd have to cook from now on, or eat old, expired food. I slipped on my fire breather's jacket, mask, and helmet, said my goodbye to Tiffany, and took one last look at the Charleston Fire Department. I won't lie, it was hard to leave this place. The area around the building was quiet, and the bots kept the building safe and protected. I even had someone to talk to, but this wasn't my home. Not yet. I had to finish what I started first. I checked the map to see how far away the top of the world was. If I was lucky, I would make it by nightfall. Without a moment to lose, I hit the road. Along Route 62, I came across an eerie sight, a camp cobbled together from wood walls, scrap metal, and canvas tarps to provide some protection from the sun overhead. Next to one of the entrances was a sign that looked like a mountain with skis crossed under it like crossbones. I headed into the woods and cautiously made my way around the outside of the camp, taking cover from tree to tree. The camp was silent. Nobody walking in or out, no voices, nothing. Part of me wanted to head inside, see if there were any supplies left from the people who lived there, until I saw 2 severed human heads on pikes. That was enough to make me think twice about my plan and hightail it as fast as I could away from that camp. Abandoned or no, I decided it would be best to keep to the woodline from here on out. And that's when I saw it. Off in the distance, I saw a light green haze emanating from a crack in the pavement in the middle of the road, a few scorched standing just beyond it. As I was about to take a shot on the scorched, I heard it, a screech coming from the crevice. Out shot the terrifying creature. Its wings were enormous, each beat pushing clouds of ash and dust into the sky. Its body seemed to glow faintly, pulsing with radiation and heat. It looked like something out of a nightmare, its body twisted and unnatural, almost skeletal, and its glowing eyes seemed to burn with malice. Part of me wanted to run, but another part couldn't look away. The terror was real, but so was the awe. I broke through my own thoughts. I had to move. The words of Claire rang in my mind. Find a building. Find cover. With no buildings in sight, I ran behind a tree before the blasts of radiation that belched from its mouth could hit me. And that's where I hid. I had to. The beast circled the area, looking for me. I could hear its massive wings flapping in the wind. I kept in my hiding spot, adjusting my position to avoid its gaze. When I felt like there was enough time for me to run, I bolted. I put as much distance as I could between me and the beast, straight up the hill and into the woods. I had to keep myself away from it. With the scorched beast behind me, I made my way up over the hill and back to the main road. I breathed a sigh of relief as my heart finally started to settle in my chest again. I stayed off the main road, staying in the brush along the side. My head was on a swivel and my nerves were on edge. I felt like I was ready for anything. The sun was hanging low in the sky as I drew closer to the top of the world. I was hugging a rocky outcropping when I heard the low, guttural growl and heavy footsteps from something on the cliff above me. Gunfire rang out from the White Springs resort and I backtracked a bit to find a better position to finally see it. How do I describe the thing I saw? It was massive, towering over everything. Its body was bulbous and misshapen, covered in pale, rubbery flesh that looked slick. It had no neck, just a hulking form with 2 thick arms that it used to move itself forward. Its legs were short and stubby and it pushed itself along like a chimpanzee. Luckily, the bots that protected the resort had its attention so I could observe the monster. With each hit, black ooze sprouted from its body. Oil, maybe? I found some cover and watched the battle unfold. I was rooting for the bots, but the monsters might rip through them. Explosions and flying metal parts filled the air as I watched on with a horrified fascination. It seemed to attack with superior strength and balls of black goo from its body. As quickly as the gunfire started, it settled down. The monster had destroyed the bots and scurried off to find more to break apart. I didn't wait for it to return to its roost above the road. I continued on my journey before I became a mangled mess like those bots. The sun had set completely below the horizon, and the thought of finding a place to camp started to sound better and better with each step. Suddenly, my Pip-Boy indicated that there was a new radio signal. I turned it on to listen.
Calling all right. This is the Rose. If you hear me, the top of the world, Pleasant Valley. I need help getting together so we can. If you think you look forward to meeting you.
Someone was up there. The message was garbled, but it sounded like she needs help. I pushed on in hopes of finding someone alive up at the top of the world. The top of the world finally came into view against the night sky. It was huge, much bigger in person. Round platform covered by a dome with a broadcast tower on top. That's where I needed to go. Hopefully Madigan is up there with this Rose person. I noticed that the old highway sign for the Pleasant Valley Ski Resort had an odd symbol over it, a bird drawn in red ink, or maybe blood. And below that was a menacing sight, a camp made of rusted scrap metal, canvas tarps, and spikes. It reminded me of the one I had seen earlier on the road, but this symbol was much different. And this one had people at it. I heard soft banjo music drifting from the camp and spotted a person pacing near the front entrance. I ran into the brush line to get a better look. I thought I avoided being seen until I heard the shots ring out and an alarm blast. They had seen me and I was in a fight for my life. These people were heavily armed and one even wore a suit of power armor. Dogs were soon on my heels. I didn't know how many they had chasing me, but I stuck to my strategy. My only chance was to break their line of sight, hide, and take them out from any cover or hiding spot I could. During my retreat, I was shot and burned, getting hit several times by bullets and the occasional enemy that got too close. For a moment, I thought this was the end. My heart pounded loudly in my ears, and I knew I had used my last Stimpack. I thought this was it. But somehow, I was able to put enough distance between me and my new enemy and find cover. I hunkered down, ripped up some clothes, and was able to stop the bleeding that the Stimpack didn't stop. I felt a new feeling wash over me. I was alive, but now, I was angry. These people just shot at anyone who walked too close to their camp, and though I couldn't blame them for being cautious, they tried to kill me. I was one person against their 10 or more, and who knows what they would do to me if they found me. Instead of slinking off somewhere and hiding like I normally would, I decided to try to take them out myself, end their threat. Maybe even find more medical supplies at their camp. They'd be more useful to me than those assholes. Once I was strong enough to do so, I got to my feet and slowly made my way to the top of the hill. I had the high ground. First things first, get rid of the big guy in the power armor. When I saw them again, they were shooting at something. I assumed for a moment that they were shooting at a spot where they thought I was. I took a shot while the one in power armor was distracted. The darkness made it difficult to see my target as I positioned myself in a place to face off against them, but it also made me harder to hit as well. With one final shot, I put the man in the power armor down. Now, to take care of the rest. I crept forward to find better angles at the others from the makeshift camp. These bandits, raiders, whatever you want to call them, they kept firing in my direction. At least that's what I thought before some creature, black as night with glowing red eyes, made a chirping noise before rocketing into the sky. My breath caught in my throat and I stumbled back a bit. I quickly shook off my shock. I couldn't focus on that right now. I had to keep focused on the immediate threat. After I cleared out the rest of the enemies from the safety of my perch on the hill, I slowly made my way to their camp. The place was set up like a small fort with defenses, supplies, sleeping areas, and 2 ways in and out. It was perfectly placed to harass anyone heading up to the top of the world. I spent a few minutes picking through what little they had left. I found a few Stimpaks and some canned food. Not enough to make killing all of those people worth it. I did find some comfort knowing that others that came after me would be a little bit safer. Among everything else at the camp, I found a holotape.
Smash no weak beneath our feet. Prepare for war. Bathe in gore. Blood eagles, have no fear. Blood eagles just want your ears.
Now that the battle was over and the adrenaline was wearing off, I felt the damage that was done to my body. My wounds needed some time to heal, and my muscles needed rest. I was so close to my goal, but if there were more of these blood eagles at the top of the world, I would be in no shape to face them. Instead, I headed into the woods and made a small camp away from the road. I kept the fire a little more than low embers to avoid drawing attention as much as possible. I used up most of the medical supplies that I found in that camp to patch myself up. Most of the bleeding has stopped, but I find my mind wandering back to the woman I killed a few days ago. What if she was like one of these blood eagles? How many people did she hurt or kill to survive as long as she had? Were my actions justified, like I find myself justifying them now? This world is taking its toll on me. I just need sleep. Maybe this is all a bad dream and I will wake up back in the vault, safe, warm, and with no blood on my hands. I highly doubt that.